Winter does not arrive suddenly. There is no single morning where the world feels different, no clear moment when warmth leaves and suffering begins. In a medieval winter survival season, the cold doesn't kick the door in. At first, it is easy to ignore. A cooler breeze at dawn, frost that vanishes by midday, breath that lingers in the air for just a moment longer than it did the week before. You notice it, but you do not fear it. Not yet. This is how winter has always worked here. It gives warning. And in the Middle Ages, warning does not mean safety. It only means inevitability. You wake before the sun, as you always do, because daylight is precious and cannot be wasted. The room is darker than it should be. The walls, built from wood and packed earth, hold no warmth from the night before. The fire has long since died, reduced to cold ash and blackened stones. There is no point in relighting it now. Firewood is counted carefully, and every log burned too early is a log that will not be there later, when the cold truly settles in. You sit up slowly, wrapped in rough wool that scratches the skin and smells faintly of smoke and damp. The blanket is thin, worn down from years of use, and offers little resistance against the chill that creeps upward from the floor. Your feet touch the ground, and the cold shocks you awake more effectively than any sound ever could. This is how every day begins. Outside, the village is quiet, not peaceful, but restrained. Sound carries differently when the air is cold. Footsteps feel louder. Doors seem heavier. Even voices, when they are used, remain low, as if the cold itself is listening. You step outside and feel the change immediately. The earth is harder underfoot. The grass has lost its color. The sky hangs low and pale, offering light but no warmth in return. Somewhere nearby, a crow calls once, then falls silent. Winter is not here yet, but it is close enough to be felt. In a world without insulation, without stored heat, without glass windows or sealed doors, the cold is not something that stays outdoors. It enters homes freely. It slips through gaps in walls, through cracks in doors, through roofs patched together with straw and hope. It settles into bones and joints, waiting patiently. And everyone knows what is coming. There will be less food. There will be more sickness. There will be fewer people. This knowledge is not spoken aloud, but it is understood by everyone in the village. It is passed down the way habits are passed down, the way posture and routine are learned without instruction. You know when to save. You know when to endure. You know not to complain. Complaining wastes energy. Winter is not dramatic here. It does not arrive with storms or sudden disaster. It tightens slowly, like a hand closing around something fragile. Each day removes a small comfort. Each week demands a quiet adjustment. By the time the cold fully takes hold, you have already given up more than you realized. The morning meal, if it can be called that, is simple. It always is. A small piece of bread, hard from age and poorly stored, dipped into thin broth made from whatever could be spared. The taste is dull, almost absent, but that is not what matters. What matters is that it fills the stomach just enough to keep the body moving. Hunger is not an emergency here. It is a condition, a background presence, something that fades and returns and fades again, never fully leaving, never demanding attention loudly enough to be addressed. You eat slowly, not to savor, but to extend the moment. When the bowl is empty, it is empty. There will not be more until later, and later is never guaranteed. Around you, others do the same. Faces are drawn but calm. No one rushes. No one speaks of fear. There is work to be done, and winter does not pause for dread. The fields still need tending, even as the soil grows stubborn and unyielding. Repairs must be made before the cold worsens. Roofs must be checked. Animals must be fed from dwindling stores. Every task carries weight now, because mistakes will matter more in the weeks ahead. You pull your clothing tighter, layering what little you have. Wool, linen, patches sewn onto patches. There are no gloves. Hands will grow numb. Fingers will stiffen. This is expected. Pain, too, is expected. In medieval life, pain is not treated as a problem to be solved. It is a signal to endure. You learn early which aches can be ignored and which ones cannot. Even then, the difference often comes too late. As the day moves on, the cold remains steady, persistent rather than cruel. The sun rises higher, but it does not warm you. It only reveals more clearly what has already changed. Breath remains visible. Shadows are sharp. The world feels brittle, as if it might crack if struck too hard. The first task of the morning is always the same. You check the firewood. There is less than there was yesterday. The pile is smaller, uneven, pieces already chosen and removed with care. Each log represents a decision not yet made. Burn it now or save it for later. Warm the body or save warmth for the night. Cook food or keep hands from stiffening beyond use. There is no correct answer, only consequences. You choose a small piece, smaller than yesterday's. Enough to wake the fire, not enough to feed it for long. The flame catches reluctantly, smoke rising before heat follows. The room fills with the smell of burning wood and damp air, sharp and uncomfortable, but welcome. Everyone moves closer. Bodies gather instinctively, drawn toward the promise of warmth, like plants toward light. Space becomes shared out of necessity, not affection. Elbows touch, knees press together, breath overlaps. This closeness is not intimacy, it is survival. Breakfast is prepared slowly. There is no rush. Rushing wastes energy, and energy is precious now. The pot is set above the fire, its contents thin and familiar. Water, grain, perhaps a scrap of vegetable saved from better days. The mixture warms gradually, stirred carefully to avoid burning what little there is. As it cooks, the fire weakens. The wood was never meant to last. It gives what it can, and then retreats into embers once more. When the food is ready, it is portioned evenly. No one takes more. No one asks for extra. Fairness here is not kindness. It is necessity. Resentment burns hotter than firewood ever could, and it lasts much longer. You eat quietly, spoon scraping softly against the bowl. The warmth of the food spreads briefly, a small comfort that fades as quickly as it arrives. Hunger does not leave. It only loosens its grip slightly, enough to allow movement. Outside, the day has fully begun. The sky remains pale, the sun distant and ineffective. Frost clings stubbornly to the ground, refusing to melt even as light touches it. Each step outside crunches faintly, the sound sharp in the cold air. Work waits. Before stepping out, you layer what you can. Clothing is stiff from the cold, fabric resisting movement until warmed by the body. You pull it into place anyway, accepting the discomfort as inevitable. Hands are the first to suffer. Without gloves, skin cracks and splits, small wounds forming where the cold and dryness meet. They bleed occasionally, but not much. Blood moves slowly now. You tuck your hands into your sleeves as you walk, bringing them out only when necessary. The habit is automatic. Everyone does it. The village moves as one organism in the morning. Doors open, figures emerge. Paths form where feet have worn them down over time. No one lingers. Standing still invites the cold to settle deeper. Children move among the adults, carrying smaller loads, mimicking movements they have watched all their lives. There is no instruction. Learning happens through repetition. Mistakes are corrected quietly, sometimes with a look, sometimes with silence. Silence is the preferred teacher. As the hours pass, the cold does not ease. It remains steady, pressing gently but persistently against skin and muscle. Breath stays visible, fingers grow stiff, backs ache sooner than they should. Pain is acknowledged, then ignored. There are no complaints. Complaints suggest the possibility of relief, and relief is not something winter offers freely. To complain is to waste breath on something that cannot be changed. Instead, the work continues. By midday, the sun reaches its highest point, though it does little to help. Shadows shorten, but the air remains cold. The body grows tired faster now, movements slowing as energy is rationed unconsciously. When there is a pause, it is brief. Long enough to eat what little has been saved. Long enough to stretch cramped muscles. Not long enough to cool completely. Cooling completely is dangerous. As afternoon drifts toward evening, fatigue sets in deeper. Not the sharp exhaustion of sudden effort, but the dull weight of ongoing strain. Each task takes more from the body than it did weeks ago. Recovery is slower. Warmth is harder to reclaim once lost. You notice small things more now. How long it takes for feeling to return to your fingers. How your breath catches when you bend too quickly. How the cold seems to reach places it did not before. These are signs, though you do not name them as such. As daylight fades again, the village retreats indoors. Work is left unfinished, not because it is done, but because there is no choice. Darkness arrives early, and darkness brings risk. Inside, the fire is coaxed back to life once more. Another small piece of wood is chosen. Another decision is made. The warmth spreads briefly, unevenly. Some sit close, others wait their turn. Smoke gathers again, stinging eyes and throats, but no one moves away. This warmth, however imperfect, is all there is. Night settles in quietly, wrapping the village in darkness and cold. Outside, the wind moves through bare branches, carrying the promise of colder days ahead. As you lie down again, the events of the day blur together. Morning cold, brief warmth, labor, hunger, fatigue. The pattern is already familiar, and winter has only begun to show its shape. Sleep comes easier now, not because the night is kinder, but because the body has less strength to resist it. Exhaustion dulls awareness. Cold becomes a constant rather than a shock. You sleep knowing that tomorrow will be the same, and that the day after will ask for a little more. As the days stretch into months, the body's adjustment to hunger grows more intricate, more insidious. It is not simply a matter of eating less. It's not about just surviving from one meager meal to the next. Hunger infiltrates your every action, decision, and interaction with those around you. It molds the way you perceive the world and redefines your relationship with time. Hunger does more than create a void within you. It alters the fabric of your existence. At first, it was a simple matter of rationing, of counting every grain of rice, every morsel of bread. But as the days pass, hunger becomes an all-consuming presence. It moves beyond the physical and lodges itself in the corners of your mind. You can't help but think about it constantly. The body's need for food is undeniable, but hunger shifts into something deeper. The body becomes less a machine designed to do work and more a fragile shell that must be carefully managed. Every movement is calculated to conserve energy. Every task is evaluated based on how much energy it consumes versus what it gives back. The mind too becomes sharper in its focus. Once, there were worries beyond the day's work, thoughts about family, dreams, hopes for the future. But hunger strips away those luxuries. There is no room for hope anymore. There is no energy to dream. The only thoughts that remain are of survival. Every action is stripped down to its most basic form. Will this feed me? Will this keep me alive? It's a simple question, but one that forces you to re-evaluate everything you once took for granted. Your life is reduced to nothing more than the process of obtaining and consuming enough sustenance to carry you to the next day. At first, there is an odd comfort in this. The world becomes smaller, less complicated. You no longer waste energy on unnecessary thoughts or feelings. You are forced to focus on the immediate and the tangible. There's something almost peaceful in the simplicity of it. But that peace is fleeting. The gnawing hunger is always present, always waiting for you to lose your concentration for just a moment. The sharp pangs of hunger that once consumed your thoughts are now a constant hum in the background, a dull ache that you've learned to live with but never fully ignore. The body, too, becomes a more efficient machine. It learns to store energy, to use less, to operate on the bare minimum. But this efficiency comes at a cost. Muscles shrink. Energy reserves dwindle. The strength that once carried you through long days of labor now feels fragile and unreliable. There are moments as the days blur together when you feel the weight of it all, when your body refuses to do the work, when your legs wobble beneath you and your hands tremble as you grip the tools of survival. But there is no room for weakness here. No one speaks of it. No one admits to it. To stop, to rest too long, would be to risk everything. You keep working despite the fatigue, despite the hunger, because survival is a constant race against time. There is no option for failure. The silence that grows around you becomes suffocating. Hunger takes away more than just food. It takes away your ability to speak, to engage, to connect. Conversations grow quieter and quieter, not because there is nothing to say, but because every word costs energy. There is no longer any room for unnecessary words. People begin to speak less, moving more efficiently with fewer gestures and fewer exchanges. The work itself becomes mechanical. It is no longer driven by purpose or desire, but by the instinct to survive. Tasks are done simply because they must be done, and each movement is calculated in relation to how much energy it will take to complete. There is no room for passion, no room for enthusiasm. There is only the cold, the hunger, and the work.
And yet, even in the face of this, there are moments of strange clarity. When the cold is biting and the hunger is unbearable, there is an understanding that emerges, an awareness of the fragility of life. The simple act of gathering around a fire becomes a quiet ritual of solidarity. Everyone is suffering, but in the shared silence there is a connection that can't be put into words. In the face of hunger, of hardship, of inevitable loss, there is something human about the way you endure together. This shared suffering becomes a bond, one that can't be explained but is deeply felt. Even the children, who were once full of questions and energy, are subdued now. They move more slowly, speak less, and accept the hunger with a resignation that mirrors the adults around them. The knowledge of hunger is passed on without words, without explanation. The children learn quickly that asking for more food is futile, that complaining only draws attention to the unbearable. They understand, as you do, that survival is not guaranteed and that every day is a delicate balancing act. As night falls, the hunger is lessened only by the darkness that surrounds you. The body may sleep, but the mind is never truly at rest. Even in the quiet of the night, you remain alert. Hunger makes sleep lighter.
Every small noise, every shift in position is heard and felt with sharp clarity. There is no peace in the night, only the sound of your breath, the beating of your heart, and the endless gnawing hunger that refuses to be ignored. The morning comes, as it always does, without kindness, without relief. The cycle begins anew. Each day takes a little more and gives back a little less. The hunger, once a sharp pain, now becomes a dull, constant companion. You've learned to live with it, but you know that it is never truly gone. You live only for today, for the small reprieves that come with each bite of food, and you hold on to the fragile hope that tomorrow will bring another chance to survive. Winter has not yet reached its coldest point, and already you wonder if you will make it through. Work does not stop when winter deepens. It slows, it hardens, it demands more effort for less reward, but it does not stop. In this world, work is not something you do to improve life. It is something you do to prevent it from ending too soon. Every morning feels the same now. The sun rises weakly above the horizon, casting little warmth, only pale light that seems more distant as the cold presses down on you. Even before your eyes open, the chill is present. The frost that settles on the windowsill, the breath that clouds before your face, and the stiffness in your joints are constant reminders that winter has no mercy. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It simply comes, and it demands that you endure. You wake again to the same oppressive cold. It is not a sharp, biting cold, but one that seeps in slowly, stealing your warmth bit by bit, minute by minute. You feel it the moment your feet touch the floor, your toes curling instinctively against the icy surface. You pause, feeling the resistance in your limbs, the heaviness in your chest. Every movement feels like an exertion now. There is no grace to it, no fluidity. Every action feels forced, as if the body is trying to resist the cold, to preserve the last traces of warmth, even as they fade away. You stretch your arms above your head, feeling the ache in your back as it tugs against the stiffness that has set in. The cold lingers at the edges of your awareness, gnawing at you, not allowing you to forget that it is there. Every joint in your body protests. Every muscle that has carried you through the coldest days of winter groans in protest. But there is no room for complaining. There is no time for weakness. The work awaits. You push yourself to move, to stand, to get ready. But you do so slowly, deliberately, as if every movement might be your last. Each motion, each breath is a laborious effort. Outside, the earth is frozen solid, the soil hard beneath your feet. The ground, which once yielded to tools and hands, now resists, as if the land itself has given up. The frost has settled in deeply. It holds the earth like a vice, preventing the flow of life, making every task feel impossible. The tools, once light and easy to handle, now seem heavier. The metal of the pickaxe feels colder in your grip, and the wood of the shovel feels brittle. Every stroke feels like it requires more effort, more energy. But you continue, because to stop would be to give in. The world doesn't stop for you. Your muscles, once firm and capable, now feel sluggish. They burn sooner, tire faster. The hunger that has been a constant presence grows more insistent now. It claws at your stomach, hollowing you out. You've learned to ignore it, to push it aside, but it's always there, a constant companion. Your body has adapted to working through the hunger, through the cold, but it still weighs you down, still drags at your every movement. You pace yourself as you work, not because you want to, but because you have no choice. The cold demands it. Your body demands it. You cannot push yourself too hard, cannot waste any energy that you might need to get through the next moment, the next hour. Your movements are careful, calculated. Every swing of the axe, every strike of the hammer, every shovelful of snow must be measured, deliberate. You cannot afford mistakes. Mistakes waste energy, and energy is something you no longer have to spare. Your breath is shallow as you work, the cold air entering your lungs and immediately seizing them, making each inhale feel like a struggle. Your chest tightens, your throat feels raw, but you keep going. There is no time to rest. There is no room for weakness. Around you, others work in the same silence, the same slow rhythm. No one speaks much anymore. The cold takes the words from your mouth, makes them freeze before they can even leave your lips. The few words exchanged are quick, sharp, necessary. There is no conversation, no idle chatter. Everyone is focused on the task at hand. Survival. Every action, every thought, every breath is devoted to the singular goal of getting through the day. The children, too, are caught in this relentless cycle. They carry bundles of firewood, drag sleds filled with snow or debris, their small hands shaking as they work. Their bodies, still growing, are not spared. Hunger has already begun to wear at them. Their eyes are wide with the same fatigue you feel in your own bones. They stumble occasionally, their steps slower than before. They lean against walls for a moment of rest, rubbing their hands together to bring some warmth back. They look tired, so tired. But they don't stop, they can't. You notice them slowing down earlier in the day, their movements becoming more sluggish. Their cheeks, once round and full, are drawn tight, their eyes sunken with exhaustion. They no longer ask for things, no longer beg for food, no longer make demands. They know better now. There is no food to ask for. There is no warmth to demand. There is only what they are given, and it is never enough. You can't help but feel the weight of their hunger. It's a hunger you know all too well. They eat what they can, but it's never enough. They've learned, just as you have, to ration their hunger, to endure it. But it's harder for them. They are still growing. They need food, they need energy, and yet it is always just out of reach. The cold creeps deeper as the hours pass. It begins to settle into your muscles, wrapping around your limbs, making each movement harder than the last. You feel it in your back first, a dull ache that deepens as you continue to work. Then it spreads to your knees, your shoulders, your elbows. Every joint in your body protests, but you keep moving. You can't stop. Not yet. Not until the day is over. The midday sun offers no warmth. It hangs low in the sky, a weak, pale disk that casts long shadows across the snow-covered ground. Its light is distant, almost as if it is retreating from the cold. The shadows stretch longer, and the air remains sharp. You pause briefly, but there is no comfort in the break. You eat quickly, a small piece of bread, a sip of water. It is enough to remind your body that food still exists, but it does little to stave off the hunger that claws at your insides. There is no time to linger. The cold is always there, waiting to reclaim the warmth you've gained from your movements. You eat, but your mind is already on the next task. You cannot afford to stand still. Standing still means giving in to the cold.
The work resumes, and with it, the fatigue. Each task becomes harder. Each movement feels more strained. Your hands tremble, your breath shortens, your body feels heavier. The cold has seeped into you, into every fibre of your being, and you are running on fumes. But still, you press on. There is no other choice. To stop means to risk everything. The ground beneath you is frozen, unforgiving. Each strike of the pickaxe is met with resistance. Each shove of the shovel is met with stubborn earth. The work is slow, methodical, but it is also exhausting. Every stroke feels like it drains a little more of you, a little more of your will, until you are nothing more than a body moving through the motions, a machine that keeps working because it has no other choice. As the afternoon wears on, you begin to notice the first signs of exhaustion in the others around you. They stumble, they pause more often. They lean against the walls, rubbing their eyes, trying to shake off the fatigue that is beginning to overtake them. You feel it too, but you push it down. You force your body to continue, to move, to work. You can't afford to stop. You can't afford to be weak. Winter doesn't care about weakness. It only cares about survival. And survival means pushing through, even when every fibre of your being screams for rest. As the light begins to fade, the cold intensifies again. You feel it creeping up from the ground, wrapping around your calves, your knees, your hips. Your body grows heavier. Your limbs feel less responsive. You force yourself to finish what must be done before the darkness fully takes over. Darkness brings its own dangers. The ground becomes even harder to navigate, the obstacles more treacherous. Mistakes become costly. Injuries can be deadly. When work finally ends for the day, there is no sense of accomplishment, only relief that it is over. But the relief is fleeting because you know tomorrow will bring the same demands, the same cold, the same hunger, the same work. Inside, the fire is lit once again, but its warmth is meagre. The fire offers a small reprieve, but it is never enough. The warmth is fleeting, uneven, and soon dissipates, leaving you with the same cold you've battled all day. You huddle close to the flame, hands held out to it, trying to absorb whatever heat you can. The pain of cold, of exhaustion, begins to recede as you eat. Food is eaten quickly, without ceremony. Hunger remains, but exhaustion dulls it slightly. You can't afford to savor your food. You must finish it before the cold gets worse. Lying down to sleep brings its own discomfort. The bed is cold. The blankets are thin. The cold creeps in, pressing against your skin, reminding you that there is no escape. The cold is always with you, a constant companion, an ever-present threat. Sleep comes quickly, but not easily. The body gives in to exhaustion, but the mind remains alert, aware of the cold, aware of the hunger, aware of the work that awaits tomorrow. Winter does not care how tired you are. It doesn't care how hungry you are. It doesn't care how exhausted your body is. It simply exists, and it will continue to exist until you have nothing left to give. Tomorrow, the work will continue, and so will you. Because survival doesn't stop, not in winter, not ever. Illness arrives quietly in winter. It does not announce itself with urgency or alarm. It slips in unnoticed, disguised as fatigue, as stiffness, as the ordinary aches of cold and hunger. At first, it is easy to ignore. Everyone feels unwell in winter. Everyone hurts. Everyone coughs. You tell yourself it will pass, but it doesn't. The body grows weaker slowly. Movements that once required effort now require concentration. Breathing feels heavier, especially in the cold air. A cough lingers longer than it should, dry and persistent, scraping the throat without relief. It feels like an invisible weight that settles upon you, just beneath the surface, like a shadow that you cannot shake. The cold seems to invite illness, a cruel extension of the already suffocating winter. It presses on you, deepens in your chest, and makes each day feel longer. At first, you try to push it away. A few extra layers of clothing, a sip of water, a handful of berries if you're lucky. Perhaps the illness is just a passing chill, something you'll shake off by morning. It's nothing serious. You'll keep moving, keep working, keep doing what you must. The world doesn't stop for illness, and neither can you.
But as the days stretch on, the sickness becomes impossible to ignore. The body begins to protest in ways you hadn't anticipated. There is a heaviness in your limbs that makes each step harder, each task more cumbersome. The ache that started in your joints now spreads to your head, your eyes, your chest. Every breath feels like it's coming from too far away, shallow, as though the air is too thick to fill your lungs properly. You fight it, of course. You keep working. You ignore the dizziness, the headache, the soreness. You try to convince yourself that it's nothing. The problem is, everyone else feels the same. You see it in their eyes, in the way their movements slow, in the way their shoulders slump, and in the coughs that grow more frequent with each passing day. The cold does not spare anyone. It saps at the strength of the young, the old, the strong, and the weak. It affects everyone, making the very air seem heavy. The village, once lively with the hum of everyday life, now feels like it's moving in slow motion. The work continues, but it feels more labored. The conversations become quieter. The laughter, if there is any left, sounds hollow. No one has the energy for anything more than the bare necessities. No one comments on it. Illness here is private. To speak of it openly is to invite concern, and concern rarely changes outcomes. It does not matter if you tell someone you are unwell. There is no remedy. There is no hope for treatment. The idea of seeking help is foreign. The doctor is a myth, a dream from a past life. There is no medicine to take. There are no magical cures. You can only endure. The knowledge of the body is limited, inherited from generations who lived without the luxury of medical care. Old remedies, tea made from roots and leaves, vinegar gargles, hot cloths, have been passed down through years of hardship, but they are nothing more than desperate acts of tradition. None of them are guarantees. In fact, some of them may be little more than placebo, but they offer the illusion of control in an environment that feels entirely out of control. A fever is something to endure. Pain is something to tolerate. Infection is something to hope will resolve on its own. The knowledge that this illness could become something far more dangerous lurks at the back of your mind, but there is little you can do to fight it. You push it away, as you have learned to do with so many things, because the alternative is to stop, and stopping means giving in. Sometimes it does resolve. Sometimes the fever breaks, and you wake damp with sweat, feeling weak but alive. You might get up, return to your work, and carry on. You might even think that the worst has passed. But more often than not, it doesn't pass. It lingers. It spreads. The illnesses here don't simply disappear. The body, weakened by hunger, cold, and exhaustion, becomes fertile ground for something worse. A cough turns into something more persistent. A fever that doesn't break turns into something more debilitating. A scrape on your hand that would have been a minor nuisance in warmer months becomes a potential life-threatening infection. The smallest wound can become a gateway to something more serious when your immune system is already depleted by the brutality of winter. As you go about your day, you notice that there's an increasing number of people, especially the elderly, who are beginning to slow down. Their steps are measured, careful. They sit more often. They can't lift as much as they used to. You hear them cough too, but they don't make it a big deal. They never do. It's part of life here, part of the rhythm. To admit that you are ill is to admit weakness, and weakness invites danger. It invites suspicion. It invites people to question how much longer you can contribute, and that, in winter, can be a death sentence. Some insist they feel fine. Others say nothing at all. The very act of talking becomes too much of an effort. The bodies of the old are slowing, becoming frail, brittle. They don't want to be a burden. They want to keep working, to keep contributing, but the simple truth is that they cannot. You see it in their faces, paleness that doesn't fade with the light, eyes that sink into their skulls, and hands that shake just a little too much to grip the tools properly. They may not say it, but the cold is getting to them. The hunger is getting to them, and there is no one to save them. The children are not spared either. You watch them closely, listening to the quiet wheeze in their coughs, their tired eyes. They are still small enough to be carried, to be soothed, but that too is wearing thin. They are growing up far too quickly, their bodies already hardening under the pressure of the cold and the hunger. It is as if the winter has stripped away their youth, leaving only the shell of their former selves. They sleep longer now, their small bodies unable to keep up with the demands of daily survival. When they wake, it is slower, more sluggish. Their energy is gone. They have learned that the world does not wait for them to be well. They are learning that there is no time for rest, no time for weakness. In winter, childhood grows shorter. It does not end suddenly, and it is not marked by a single moment of loss. Instead, it fades gradually, worn away by routine, responsibility, and necessity. The cold does not distinguish between ages. Hunger does not adjust its demands for smaller bodies. Work does not wait for growth. The first cold morning of winter arrives as it always does, uninvited and unannounced. It brushes against the skin, lingering like a warning. The warmth of the previous day vanishes overnight, replaced by the biting chill that creeps into every corner of the home. The days grow shorter, the sun weaker, and the hours pass more slowly in the thick, heavy cold. As each child stirs from beneath their thin blankets, they are met with a cold that immediately settles into their bones. There is no hesitation, no time to acclimate. They simply rise as they must. Their small hands, once full of energy and curiosity, are now covered in the rough, patched clothing that has been passed down to them from older siblings or parents. These clothes were not made for them, not in the way a warm coat should fit or boots should protect. They are simply what is available. Oversized, mismatched, and often too thin to keep the cold away completely, they are necessary, practical, but they do little to protect. The fabric brushes against small frames like a constant reminder that they are growing too quickly, that their childhood is disappearing bit by bit. Their sleeves extend far past their hands and their hems drag on the ground. There is no room for play in clothes that swallow them whole. These garments are not made to be comfortable. They are made to last, to survive, and so too are the children. The first task in the morning, as always, is observation. They lie still for a moment, watching their elders as they move through the same morning ritual. There are no words of instruction, no announcements or ceremonies. They watch quietly, taking in everything with eyes that are already too tired for their age. How to ration warmth, how to stretch food, how to prepare for a day that will take more than it gives. The lessons begin almost immediately, not through direct teaching, but through absorbed knowledge. Every glance, every moment spent in silence is a chance to learn. They notice the adults' movements, how they rub their hands together to bring back warmth, how they crouch low to avoid standing too long in the freezing cold, how every task is done slowly, deliberately, because every movement consumes precious energy. The children don't have the luxury of complaining. They don't have the luxury of resistance. The rules are clear. To survive, you must work. As their limbs awaken with the cold, the smallest hands begin to carry the lighter loads. They gather what others might overlook. The broken twigs, the fallen branches, The scattered logs. These are now the children's responsibility. They fetch water from the well when it has not yet frozen completely, and they tend to the few animals that remain, making sure not to waste any feed. The simple acts of collecting firewood or securing the shelter from the snow become acts of survival, and these tiny, hesitant hands are called to do them. They don't question. They don't ask for more than they are given. They learn quickly that there is no room for indulgence. While play does not disappear entirely, it becomes rare, fleeting, and subdued. The moments of joy are short-lived, snatched in brief intervals between the heavier tasks that mark the children's days. Laughter, when it does happen, sounds different now. It is shorter, softer, quieter. It is stifled quickly, as if the energy to laugh is no longer available in the same way. They are learning instinctively how to conserve their energy, how to make each movement last. The cold teaches them to hold back, to save their warmth, to save their energy for the long, drawn-out days of survival. The hunger that gnaws at the adults gnaws just as sharply at the children. At first, it is unfamiliar, a new sensation they have not learned to endure. Their bodies are smaller, weaker. They feel hunger as sharply as adults do, and the experience is bewildering. Their stomachs grow tight, their energy fades quickly, and every step feels more difficult than the last. Their small bodies protest. Their minds struggle to comprehend the slow, insistent ache. But they learn to manage it. They learn that hunger does not go away. They learn that it is simply a part of life now. The hunger becomes familiar, expected. But even more so, it becomes quiet. The small voices, once eager to ask for more, learn not to ask. They learn that asking rarely changes outcomes. The scarcity that is their world teaches them restraint. They no longer complain about food or wish for more. Instead, they accept what they have, because that is all they are ever given. The silence of hunger becomes part of the rhythm of their lives. Illness comes for them too, just as it comes for everyone. But the effects on the children are more immediate, more visible. Fevers rise faster in smaller bodies. A cough that lingers for too long turns into something more dangerous. It doesn't take long for the illness to show itself in their pale faces, in the way their skin looks thinner, tauter. They become quieter too, as the sickness slowly takes hold. They sleep more often, and when they wake, they are less energetic, their movements slower, their voices weaker. The adults watch them closely, offering warmth when possible, shelter when it can be spared, but the protection they offer is limited. There is only so much they can do. No one can shield another completely from the season. They know that. But that knowledge does not make it easier. They watch the children, some of whom are too small to fight off the fever, others too weak to stand once it has taken hold. The children notice absence quickly. They notice when a friend does not come outside anymore, when a voice no longer joins the quiet murmur of work, when a small pair of boots remains by a door, unused. They are too young to fully understand what death is, but they understand its absence. They notice when someone is missing and they ask, but only once, sometimes twice. Then they stop. They know by now that asking for more than what is offered is futile. They know that grief is something you carry quietly, something that doesn't require words. Silence answers more honestly than words ever could. Responsibility increases without ceremony. The rules of the world remain the same. If you can work, you work. A child who loses someone does not lose their duties. The work continues. The survival continues. Grief is folded inward, carried alongside effort, not instead of it. There is no time to dwell on the past. There is no time to mourn. Tomorrow will come, and it will require work. The rhythm of life does not stop for sorrow. As the days pass, winter reshapes everyone's expectations. The children no longer imagine warmth returning easily. They no longer expect full meals. Their sense of time narrows to the immediate: morning, work, night. There is little time for play, little room for dreams. The future becomes a distant, blurry thing that doesn't seem to matter much anymore. The present, the moment when they are needed to work, that is all that remains. Education, in any formal sense, does not exist here. The knowledge children acquire is practical and immediate. It is about survival, how to avoid frostbite, how to stretch food, how to recognize sickness early, how to move carefully on frozen ground. These are the lessons they learn now. They learn them quickly because mistakes are costly and there is no room for error in this life. Their education is not written in books or taught in classrooms. It is written in the land they must work. It is written in the hunger they feel. It is taught by cold winds and by the bodies of those who fall sick, by the presence of empty bellies, and by the inevitable absence of those who can no longer contribute. At night, the children sleep closer to others, sharing warmth without thinking. They gather together, bodies seeking the smallest bit of heat, huddling for the small comfort it offers. They wake more often than they should, adjusting, curling inward, responding to the cold as instinctively as breathing. Dreams, when they come, are fragmented and fleeting. Hunger and cold seep into them, shaping images that fade quickly upon waking. Morning returns without change. There is no relief. The cold, the hunger, the work, they are all there, waiting for them again. The children rise from their beds, thin blankets pulled around their bodies, and they move once again into the cycle of survival. They have learned that there is no escape from it. There is no escape from winter. There is no celebration of age, no milestones, no birthdays to mark the passing of time. Growth is noticed only when it becomes useful, when a child can carry more, when they can work longer, when they can endure without complaint. Childhood ends not with a moment of celebration, but with the quiet acceptance of responsibility. And the winter has no interest in the milestones of age. It simply takes what it needs, and those who survive, survive. By the time winter begins to loosen its grip, those who remain are different. Smaller bodies have hardened, movements have become economical, expressions have grown more subdued. They have learned what winter demands. Winter, in its quiet cruelty, has not finished teaching. People begin to disappear without warning. There is no announcement, no clear moment when absence becomes permanent. Someone simply does not step outside in the morning. A door remains closed longer than usual. Smoke does not rise from a familiar roof. At first, this is not alarming. Winter makes everyone slower. Rest is sometimes necessary. You assume they will return tomorrow. Tomorrow comes, and they do not. You notice it only in passing. The familiar absence of their daily movements, the unspoken rhythms of their lives slipping quietly out of view. You might feel a momentary pause in your routine as you walk past their home, but you push it aside. Life continues. The cold continues. The hunger gnaws away at all of you equally, and there is no time to question it. Not yet. But by the next morning, their absence has become more noticeable. The familiar routines are now just a little off. There is no sound of children's footsteps, no gathering of firewood, no greetings as you pass by. A house once filled with voices stands silent. There is only the faint, distant creak of the wind as it sweeps across the village, carrying the chill deeper into the bones of those who remain. The village does not gather to discuss it. There is no questioning, no searching. No one asks if the person will return. Because everyone already understands what absence likely means. Understanding replaces curiosity. A name is mentioned once, quietly, then less often, then not at all. It is not that the missing are forgotten. It is that there is no room for grief to take form. There is only the constant pressure of survival. The cold, the hunger, the work, these things do not stop for the dead, nor do they stop for the grieving, and so the work continues. The tasks that were once shared are redistributed without comment. The absence is acknowledged only in the change of routine, the redistribution of responsibility. Tools are left unused, leaning against walls where hands no longer reach for them. Those who remain, those who still can, take on the work that was once spread across many. Space opens up, physically and emotionally, but the village adapts. It always does. Inside the homes of those who are gone, the air grows colder faster. Fires are not lit. Food is not cooked. The silence inside feels heavier than the cold itself. There is no longer the warmth of bodies, the hum of conversation, the shuffle of feet. It is not the kind of silence you feel comfortable in. It is the kind of silence that chills you, that makes your skin crawl and your mind wander to places you don't want to go. Eventually, someone enters the empty home, not to mourn, but to confirm. The body, if found, is handled with efficiency rather than ceremony. There is no fear in this, only necessity. Death is not new here. Winter has only made it more frequent. The body is removed. Where it goes matters less than the fact that it is no longer inside. The home must be reclaimed, the warmth redistributed. There are no elaborate goodbyes, no funeral rites. There is only the practical matter of survival. The dead are carried out, and the living continue. The village keeps moving, keeps working, keeps going. There is no place for grief, not for the dead, and certainly not for the living. Survival demands efficiency, and winter offers no distractions. Those who remain make the necessary adjustments. They do not mourn openly. There is no room for that. Grief, when it appears, is quiet, internal. It shows itself in small moments, an unspoken glance between those who knew the missing, a quiet hesitation before stepping into a familiar place, the subtle void where a laugh or a voice once filled the air. These moments are fleeting. The work never stops long enough for grief to take hold. Absence spreads unevenly across the village. Some houses lose one person, some lose more. Some are left entirely empty. These absences do not feel like singular events. Instead, they begin to blend into the larger rhythm of winter's cruelty, becoming just another part of the landscape, another piece of the puzzle that is being slowly assembled. Empty houses change the village. Wind moves through them freely, rattling shutters, lifting loose thatch. The very bones of the house seem to tremble in the absence. They become colder than occupied homes, pockets of frozen air that settle into surrounding spaces. You feel it when you pass by. There is a sharpness in the air around them, a bite that wasn't there before, something colder than the usual chill. It is like walking past a gap, a space where life should have been. Children avoid them instinctively. They feel the absence more keenly than the adults, perhaps because they still remember what the world was before the cold had hardened everything, before the silence had taken hold. At night, the village grows quieter still. Fewer voices, fewer coughs, fewer movements in the dark. The absence becomes more apparent as night falls, when the space between people is the most noticeable. The silence of winter deepens, and with it, the awareness that the village, the life they knew, is shrinking. The world around them is contracting. The weight of absence is most noticeable then, in the stillness of the night, when the sounds of labor have ceased. When the fire dies down, when the wind outside howls like a distant, mournful song, and all that remains is the quiet, empty air that is left behind. The absence grows louder, and so does the knowledge of what it means. Those who remain do not ask why. They already know. Food stores are adjusted again. Portions shift. Some supplies are moved from empty homes into occupied ones. This is not looting. It is continuation. Resources belong to those who can use them. The idea of ownership becomes increasingly irrelevant when survival is the only currency. The world of warm beds, full stomachs, and future promises slips further and further out of reach. There is only today, and today demands that you act, adjust, adapt. The village continues. It contracts, yes, but it does not collapse. People adapt. They rearrange. They take the place of those who are no longer there, and the work keeps moving bit by bit, piece by piece. In this place, death is nothing more than a recalibration of the cycle. The dead do not leave gaps. They make space for those who remain. Grief, when it appears, is quiet. It is internal, carried with an unspoken heaviness. The weight of absence sits heavily on the chest, but no one shares it aloud. There are no weeping mourners, no tearful goodbyes. The cold has a way of turning grief into something you simply bear, silently, stoically. The wind howls, the cold grows deeper, and everyone knows that mourning cannot last. The village must continue. And so it does. Life, if it can be called that, goes on. The dead are buried quietly. Their names, once spoken with care, fade from the conversation. They are remembered in passing, in a fleeting thought, but they are replaced quickly by the next cycle, the next demand, the next absence. Absence becomes routine. It becomes expected. And with it, the world shrinks just a little bit more. As winter drags on, disappearance becomes expected. Not daily, but regularly enough to be noted without surprise. The village, once full of voices, now feels empty. The houses are quieter, the streets are quieter. Fewer footsteps leave their mark in the snow. Fewer heads nod in recognition. Fewer eyes meet in the dim light of the day. The world, once expansive, has narrowed. The tasks grow heavier with each disappearance. The work is redistributed, stretched thin across fewer shoulders. The bodies that remain are thinner, slower, and more exhausted. The margins are shrinking. Mistakes, once easily forgiven, now have consequences. A dropped tool might be the difference between making it through another day or not. A misstep might cost someone their life. Winter offers no second chances. Still, no one speaks of leaving. There is nowhere to go that winter has not already claimed. The roads are unreliable. Shelter elsewhere is uncertain. No one dares to make the journey, for what lies beyond the village is just as unforgiving. Staying is not bravery, it is inertia. The desire to remain is not a conscious decision, it is simply the force of habit, the pull of survival that keeps you in place. Leaving would require courage, and courage has no place here. The only choice is to remain, to endure, to continue living, even as the world around you shrinks. Not suddenly, not dramatically. There is no clear signal that the worst has passed. The cold simply stops tightening. Days lengthen by minutes. Light lingers slightly longer in the evening. Frost softens its hold on the ground. The temperature doesn't rise enough to be called warmth, not yet. But there is a subtle change, a softening, like a breath exhaled after holding it for too long. The first moments of relief, though welcomed, are barely perceptible at first. You wake, and it feels like the same world you've been inhabiting for weeks. But now there's a new feeling. The air seems less oppressive. The frost that coated the trees and fields in a gleaming, rigid white begins to break apart, retreating in slow, uneven steps. The hard ground starts to loosen its grip, and for the first time in months, you notice the earth beneath your feet feeling less resistant, less solid. But you don't feel relief. You notice it without relief. By now, winter has taken what it will. Not suddenly, not dramatically. There is no clear signal that the worst has passed. The cold simply stops tightening. Days lengthen by minutes. Light lingers slightly longer in the evening. Frost softens its hold on the ground. The temperature doesn't rise enough to be called warmth, not yet. But there is a subtle change, a softening, like a breath exhaled after holding it for too long. The first moments of relief, though welcomed, are barely perceptible at first. You wake, and it feels like the same world you've been inhabiting for weeks. But now there's a new feeling. The air seems less oppressive. The frost that coated the trees and fields in a gleaming, rigid white begins to break apart, retreating in slow, uneven steps. The hard ground starts to loosen its grip, and for the first time in months, you notice the earth beneath your feet, feeling less resistant, less solid. But you don't feel relief. You notice it without relief. By now, winter has taken what it will. Bodies are thinner, faces more drawn. The strength that once came from the simple act of living has been used up. Now, survival itself is the only energy source remaining. Muscles that once responded with vigor now complain at even the smallest tasks. Strength isn't something to be wasted. Energy is no longer taken for granted. Every movement is deliberate, thoughtful. The spare energy that once could be allotted to unnecessary motion or conversation is now reserved. Every step, every word is calculated. Even silence feels different now. Where once it was a space to rest, now it is a part of the survival rhythm. Silence is no longer a luxury, it is a necessity. There is no time for frivolous speech. There is no energy for excessive movement. The world is narrower, and the need to fill it with idle chatter has shrunk. The cold, the hunger, the exhaustion, and the quiet sorrow have eaten away at what once seemed like small, unimportant things. They are gone now. Hunger does not vanish when winter eases. It fades slowly, reluctantly. It lingers uncomfortably, like a shadow that follows you, refusing to leave. Food does not suddenly become abundant. There is no quick recovery. The stores are low. The fields are damaged by the deep frost, and the spring thaw will take its time. Recovery will take time. And in the interim, the village survives on what little remains, scraping by with what is left. The food is enough to keep going, but never enough to satiate. The hunger is always there, gnawing at the edges of your awareness, pulling your attention back to the void, the absence. Some will not regain what was lost. There are those whose bodies were pushed too far. They have grown too weak to fully recover, their bodies stretched too thin by hunger, too battered by cold, too worn down by exhaustion. They are quieter now, more withdrawn, their bodies mere shells of what they once were. They feel the hunger still, but it is different now. It is not an empty ache. It is a hollow, lingering feeling that never quite goes away. There is no fullness to look forward to. There is only the slow, gradual depletion and the slow, steady effort to push through another day. The cold still enters homes at night, though it is less aggressive now. Fires last slightly longer. Sleep deepens slightly. These changes are noticed, but not celebrated. You notice the warmth of the fire, but it is not enough to fill the room with the comfort it once could. There is no relief in the longer days. There is only the same quiet exhaustion that has been building up over months. You are tired, but not in the way you used to be. You are fatigued in the marrow of your bones. Your muscles ache, your mind is clouded, and your emotions are dulled, all of it a byproduct of the winter that has worn you down. The physical relief of longer daylight and softer frost is tempered by the exhaustion of survival. The small adjustments, longer days, warmer nights are noticed, but they are not enough to create joy. Celebration requires certainty. Certainty is not something winter leaves behind. Winter has robbed you of any certainty. The village that once relied on the cyclical rhythms of the seasons now exists in the shadow of a permanent uncertainty. Winter, this season that seems to last forever, has stolen the idea that tomorrow will always come with a promise of change. Now, each day feels like an uncertain repetition of the last. There is no promise that things will improve. There is no guarantee of a better harvest, a warmer spring, a healthier future. All you can count on is that the work must continue. You pass empty houses more often now. Their doors hang loose. Their interiors remain cold even as the weather softens. No one rushes to reclaim them. There is no urgency. Space exists, but population has shrunk to match it. The emptiness in the village, the houses that once held families, now stands in stark contrast to what was once a bustling community. The quiet of the streets, the lack of voices, is almost suffocating. The absence of those who once lived here is not just felt in the cold, abandoned spaces, but in the daily routine that has lost its vitality. You walk through the village and see the emptiness, feel the weight of it in the air. The community, once alive with activity, now feels still, like a place where time has frozen. You pass by homes where the shutters rattle loosely in the wind, where the thatch on the roof is starting to fall away. They are empty, and they stay empty. There is no urgency to reclaim these homes. No one moves in. No one needs them. The space is there, but it does not call to anyone. The village has adjusted. The world has shrunk. Fewer feet tread the paths. Fewer eyes meet on the streets. The village continues, but it does so with less vitality, less energy, less hope. Children who remain have grown older in ways that have nothing to do with age. They speak less, observe more. Their movements carry caution learned through repetition rather than instruction. They have learned quickly what winter demands, what the world requires to survive, and they now carry that knowledge like a second skin. Their childhood, once marked by play, by laughter, by exploration, has been replaced by the weight of responsibility. They are not children anymore, not in the way they used to be. They are small adults, shaped by the brutal reality that has forced them to grow too quickly. They know how to gather firewood. They know how to stretch food. They know how to move quietly to conserve energy. They are learning how to survive. They will remember this winter without fully understanding it. The village begins the slow process of repair. Roofs are patched. Tools are cleaned. Plans are discussed quietly, cautiously. Nothing is assumed. The memory of scarcity lingers longer than the cold itself. The repairs are small, incremental. They are not grand gestures. There is no rebuilding of what was lost. There is only the careful, measured effort to keep going. The homes are made functional again. The tools are made usable. But there is no talk of abundance, no hope of returning to what was. Everything is done with the knowledge that survival is fragile, that recovery takes time, and that nothing is guaranteed. There is no room for ambition now. Only the quiet acknowledgement that survival at all costs is the only goal. Those who died are not spoken of often, not because they are forgotten, but because remembering does not change outcomes. Memory here is private. The dead are remembered in silence, in small, hidden corners of the heart. The absence of a voice, of a presence, is noted, but it is not voiced aloud. The space left by their absence is acknowledged, but no one speaks of it openly. Grief, if it exists, is carried quietly, passed from one person to another, in the way their shoulders slope or their gaze falters for just a moment. It is not shared in a communal outpouring, but absorbed in isolation. Life resumes, but it does not reset. Winter has altered expectations permanently. Comfort is no longer assumed. Abundance is viewed with suspicion. Every surplus is temporary. Every good season is understood to be fragile. You take nothing for granted now. Each meal is a blessing. Each day of warmth is a gift. Each moment of rest, a luxury. You have learned to be cautious with your resources, to ration everything, to take only what you need and no more. This knowledge becomes part of daily life, passed down without words. The survival lessons that were once theoretical are now deeply ingrained in everyone's actions. It is understood not because anyone says it, but because everyone knows it. There is no room for waste. There is no room for indulgence. You do what you must to survive. Those who remain do not feel victorious. They feel relieved, tired, and quietly changed. Winter has narrowed their world, sharpened their priorities, and removed illusions they did not know they carried. They have survived, and that is all. That is enough. The cold leaves behind a different kind of silence, not the silence of absence, but the silence of acceptance. It is not the quiet of grief or fear. It is the quiet of understanding. The quiet of people who know what has been taken, what has been lost, and what remains. The silence that follows is not one of mourning, but one of recognition. It is the silence of survival, of endurance, of knowing that, despite everything, you are still here. And that, somehow, is enough. You go on because there is nothing else to do. And because, somehow, you are still here.